Patrick Cook here. Welcome to session number 20 of our fun with Mandelbulb3D Mutations. Now, in the last session, I was demonstrating using the MutaGen to create keyframes. I haven't changed anything since we ended the last session. You note here that my parameter values were set at highest probability and greatest strength. And what that did is it gave me a Z multiplier that went from -1 to 0.51 and then basically created too much of a change in the property values between two keyframes. Too much. That's the key. All right, so what you want to do when using the MutaGen to help you create keyframes is you want to have the minimum possible formula property change. All right. So I'll tell you what, let's clean this up and let's do it again. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to clear all the previous. Clear. Yes. I just want to get rid of that keyframe there. Here's my base Mandelbulb. I want that to be -1, which is where I started. All right. And there is where I started. I can prove it. I can insert that again. Right. All right. I just inserted the Mandelbulb graphic directly from the main editor. All right. Let's get the MutaGen back up. Now this time, I'm going to dial this way down. All right. I'm going to just slightly probability, and I'm going to have a midpoint on the strength. Not much. I don't want to do much. Really don't. Okay. So let's mutate now. All right. All right. So here, between the base and the first mutation of both generations, very slight change. Let me get back here. I'm going to tweak this up a little bit more, mutate it again. Okay, there's a little bit of change here. I think this might be enough to demonstrate what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to push this up to the main editor here. All right, what we had here, our base Mandelbulb is a -1 on the Z multiplier and an 8. Let's watch this. I'm going to send this mutation up to the main editor. That's pretty radical. That's probably not going to work. But let's find out. Now it's a -0.66. All right. Let's get to our animator. Get over to the next keyframe. All right. Insert that. Let's preview it and see what we get. There we go. Okay, there we go. You see that? You see how I have minimal changes in the property values, gives me a nice, clean, smooth animation. Okay? All right. Now, let's continue this. Let's get back here. Now, we know from our previous sessions that if I double-click on this, that makes it a new mutation, and I could pull it back down here. All right, I know that. And I also know from our previous sessions that this guy is a mutation of the previous one. And we know that this is a mutation of the previous one. Now, based upon our rule of thumb, in using the MutaGen for animation or keyframe making, we know that we don't want to have too much of a leap in property values from one keyframe to the next. So it's probably safe if I call this one right here the next keyframe. All right, because this is a mutation of the previous one, and that should have minimal changes. Keep an eye up here All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click on the next mutation of the generation number 2, send that to the editor. Oh, now that changed the integer power. All right, let's see what happens. Calculate it. All right, come down here, new keyframe, insert. All right, so now I have 3 keyframes. Let's preview it. That's my first 2 keyframes right here. That's keyframe 1. This is keyframe 2. Now this is keyframe 3. Okay, good. Not too bad, not too bad. All right, I'm following the rule to not get too crazy with the changes. All right, so that's keyframe. Now let's see. This keyframe looks like pretty much the same. All right, so let's do this. Now, what I'm going to do is I just use this tile as my keyframe number 3. I don't see much difference in this next mutation, but I don't want to jump all the way over here because I'm afraid that I'm going to have too much of a property value change. But what I am going to do is I'm going to double click and I'm going to make that my new base, and I'm going to let it go ahead and mutate based upon minimal changes. I'm not seeing a whole lot of change here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mutate again. Ah, there we go. So we got a little change right here. I'm going to make this my keyframe number 4. Now you notice here I'm staying away from all these other mutations because they're too far out. This is a mutation of this. It's a mutation of this. When I'm using the MutaGen for keyframing, I tend to stay with the mutations that are early in, that are close to the base. These 2 and these 4 would be as far as I go. Otherwise, I'm going to have too much of a change. So I'm going to now make this my keyframe number 4. I'm going to push that up to the main editor. All right, and I'm going to push that into a keyframe slot number 4. I'm going to render a preview. Keyframe 1, keyframe 2 is coming up. We're right about keyframe 3. Now here's keyframe 4. All right, I got a nice smooth morphing effect. All right, and that is really cool. Now, it's important to keep the rule of thumb in mind. Keep your property values low. You do not want huge changes in your property values. Keep them low and tend to stay with the mutations close to the base. All right? And that will give you, most of the time, that will give you a nice smooth morphing effect. All right? And so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Nice smooth morphing effect. You don't want big jumps. You don't want big jumps because all of a sudden it's going to be animating and it'll poof, and it'll animate poof. You don't want that. You don't want the big jump. Well, unless you do. I mean, maybe you do. I don't. I like nice smooth morphing. All right. So tell you what, let's end this session right now. We're at the end, and when we come back in the next session, we're going to continue to talk about this. But I want to give you a couple other rules or guidelines to avoid, so that you're able to utilize the MutaGen to get a nice smooth morphing effect. All right. All right. So enough for now. Hey, get a refill on the coffee or the tea or whatever, and come on back in the next session. We're coming up on the end of the tutorial series, but we're dealing with something pretty advanced here, and I want to make sure we cover it properly because I want you to be able to use this technique to make some pretty fabulous Mandelbulb 3D animations. Okay? All right, I'll see you in the next session.